We now turn to the concept of an enabling environment. In the TNA project, we mean an enabling environment to comprise the entire range of institutional, regulatory, economic conditions in the national context that one way or the other influence the diffusion of a given technology. So by an enabling environment, we can think of the institutional setup around a given technology, and we can find different domains of the enabling environment in which certain barriers can be identified. So we can think of macroeconomic conditions as one type of domain, social norms and practices around a given technology, culture and religion plays in some cases an important role, and obviously the resources available in a national context, whether these are human, physical, financial in nature. Policies and regulation plays a key role for influencing the diffusion of technologies, as well as the technological capacity and the institutions around the technology. So in all of these domains, we can find barriers that one way or the other prevent large-scale diffusion of certain technologies. And the important point in this context is that policies can implement or adopt certain framework conditions, changes in policies and regulation in order to overcome these barriers. And I'll give two examples from macroeconomic conditions and the case of technological capacity to illustrate this point. So we can imagine a situation where a barrier is currently preventing a certain technology from diffusion, which can be related to the cost of capital and interest rate, which might be relatively high. We can also imagine a situation where the inflation rate is relatively high and where prices are fluctuating. And lastly, we can imagine a situation where import duties are high and therefore preventing import of technologies. So what can governments do in order to overcome these barriers? In this case, trade policies and laws can be adopted in order to circumvent these barriers. We can also imagine a situation where tax reform and subsidies are adopted in order to circumvent some of the economic barriers. And lastly, regulation of the financial sector institution can also be implemented to overcome some of these barriers. In the case of technological capacity, which is one of the other domains of the enabling environment, we can think of a situation where the product quality is too low, which is preventing the diffusion of a certain technology. There may be few technology nurturing sites, for example, demonstration and development sites. And lastly, there may be a limited capacity to install and operate certain technologies in a given industry, for example. And again, what can governments do in order to overcome these particular types of barriers? Well, an effective way may be to implement new standards and certification systems. There may be implemented certain testing and demonstration platforms in a particular country to overcome this particular barrier. And lastly, the government may implement certain types of training programs in order to overcome the capacity barrier. And similarly, you can imagine other situations in the case of other types of domains within the enabling environment where policies can be adopted in order to overcome particular types of barriers.